so excited. They range, but probably 3. Yeah, like there's one. Have you read it? Have you read the first? Yeah. No. I know we get. I'm gonna talk to her.
Hi guys. Our next panelist is running slightly late, but we have heard that he is en route, so he'll be here soon. So while we're waiting, I'm going to give you the room spiel, which some of you, judging from your costumes and hair, I recognize have heard this multiple times. Please put your phones on silent or turn them off. You can take photos, just no flash photography, and please no recording like video, audio. All of these are being streamed live on the web, and we are also saving all the files, so you can go to FlipON.TV and see all the panels whenever you want after the con. Awesome, and our speakers here, so we'll get them set up.
We did meet once a long time ago.
Is that website free or paid?
It's fee-based. You can launch most of the rooms for free live streaming, but to view the videos later, I think you have to pay $15 for all of the recorded rooms. I forget. But yeah, I think it's about 15. I think if you did it last year, then you get like a $3 discount or something like that. But it's something we just started. We piloted last year. This year we're doing. FlipON.TV, which is actually open to do Emerald City. They go Calgary and Rose City. Yeah, I think so. I don't know too many details about the other ones.
Yeah, there's got to be some good.
Yeah, we piloted it last year.
Great questions. Come on.
Who's doing interviews in this room?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't in this. I was in the network.
Do you remember one of the?
You sit on the side.
Yeah, I just don't remember what her name was.
Green seats.
Yeah.
All right.
The whole city is emerald.
Alrighty.
I'm gonna put this.
See, I don't even have to be over here now. You're expert, Jonah.
I got it.
Yeah, you're good. He's probably going to do it for you, but just so you know, repeat questions from the audience because it's live streaming and they don't have.
Oh, sure. Yeah, okay.
Jason's response was pretty damn funny. It was like, I heard the questions, man. He didn't know I was going to be repeating them. It was pretty funny.
I try, you know, he didn't want to know, but I think otherwise we're good. I have to set my thing up there, but we'll start in just a second.
You'll know it's time when the lights get really bright.
Uh-oh.
Are you excited? Are you pumped?
Pumped? No, I could do with a bit more pumping.
Whoa.
Whoa. I had a late night last night.
You had a what? You had a late
night.
night? I can't. I'm so jealous of that. I don't get to have late nights. I got to do all my prep.
Now we're on mic.
Oh,
Everyone can hear us.
Well, welcome to the Secret Origins Room at Emerald City Comic Con. I'm Jonah Weiland from Comic Book Resources. And our latest guest is the artist simply known as Jock.
Hello.
How you doing, Jock?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm good.
So I've actually, it's not like we're best friends or anything like that, but I've known you for a long time, since 2005.
Yeah,
we had curry in Bristol, England, and had a good time and watched a man sweat when he was eating very spicy curry.
Indeed.
There's a story behind it, but he had all his clothes on. I just realized that sounded very strange. But and I've been a fan of your work for a long time. There's a million different things we can talk about, but I want to talk about a moment that I saw happen in your career online, and I don't know if you realize how, I think it's significant. That Joker cover you did for, I think it's Detective 880.
Yeah.
And if you guys, just to refresh your memory, does everybody know it's the crazy Joker face, and it's just a bunch of ha-ha. It's awesome.
It's funny when I wondered whether you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Like,
because you posted that on Twitter, and I remember following you when that was when you posted it.
Yeah.
And I retweeted it, and almost everybody in my feed retweeted it. It went nuts immediately.
Yeah, and now it's on bathing suits, cups, t-shirts, towels, everything. Now, yeah, I've never had a response like that before. When I did the cover, I thought it was okay. I thought
you thought it was okay.
Right. And I sent like a progress shot to my editor, Mike Martz, at the time, and I said, "Oh, how's this looking?" And he said, "Like the best cover I've ever seen." And I'm like, "That's nice, thanks, Mike." But I didn't really kind of think too much of it. And then, yeah, then I put it on Twitter, and this a few years ago, I didn't have that many followers or anything, but my kind of feed just for 2 days was constant, you know, either a comment or a retweet, or no, I just, you know, I've never known anything like it, and people seem to really like that cover. So, yeah, and it's still going strong.
Talk about the making of that cover and where you were at when you decided this is going to be my approach.
Well, I was doing Black Mirror with Scott Snyder, which is a Batman story that we did together with Francesca Francavilla as well. And the Joker was going to be in, I think it was maybe in only that one episode actually, maybe 2. So I knew Joker was on the cover, and I knew that if we were going to do the Joker, and certainly Scott felt this way as well, that we wanted to make him as scary and as freaky and as, you know, twisted as we could. So I just set out to try and represent that on the cover, I guess, you know, and the kind of bat symbol pupils were inspired by, like, I think it was an old like Nintendo Batman game or something where the Joker
Really?
yeah, or I think it was a Jim Aparo, like he gave him bat pupils. I thought that's quite cool, but I just took that and just went, you know, ran with it kind of thing. So yeah.
Isn't that bizarre? I don't want to overstate things, but in a bizarre way, at least from the fan perspective, it's kind of like one of the biggest moments in your career, and you didn't even expect it, and you didn't even have that confidence in that piece of art.
But then you never do really. I mean, you can sort of know when something's working a bit, I think, but you can't kind of go, oh yeah, you know, that's just not how you're wired. I don't think, you know. So it was not how I'm wired anyway. But yeah, no, it's funny. Like even when you said it, I thought, well, what is this going to be? Is it going to be like the Losers movie, or is it going to be like the first thing I did at DC? And it was like, I wonder if it's the Joker cover. So
there's something really special about that. Have you sold the art for that?
Yeah, I sold it a long time ago.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I actually, the guy sent me a check for it, and I immediately got an offer for twice as much money. and I had the check in my hand, and I was like, but I honoured the sale.
You're a good man. Yeah. You're a good man. Okay, let's see here. Where are we going to go? I want to switch to your Savage Wolverine story. The first thing you wrote.
Yep.
I wrote and drew.
Drew, yep.
And look, every artist I talk to, they all come with their insecurities. They're their own harshest critics, never quite happy, which helps push them. But you do have a comfort zone with your art. I imagine you didn't have that same comfort zone with your writing.
Well, it was really interesting because you're absolutely right. Every artist I know, and I'm included, I can't be particularly confident about what I'm doing. I just go in every day and try and do the very best job that I can do with the thing that I'm doing. But what was really interesting about when I was working on Savage Wolverine is clearly, I think maybe as humans we've got like 20% of our brain or something that's kind of like questions yourself, or kind of, you know, because when I was working on that, all of that went on the writing, and the artwork was just a breeze. I just didn't even worry about the artwork at all. I didn't concern myself at all. I was just like, yeah, that'll be fine. And
so your insecurity for the writing actually made you possibly a better artist, at least for that one project.
Well, I just didn't worry about it. You know, I just got on with it, so that was interesting because that makes me think. So why can't I do that when I'm just doing the artwork? But it's just, as I say, you know, I mean, I think you've got to question yourself. You've got to try and push yourself. You've got to worry about what you're doing, because otherwise, why would anyone else care what you're doing if you're not putting everything you've got into it? Then why. So, but yeah, no, I mean, it was a really interesting experience. Yeah, it was literally the first thing I've ever written. So,
are you happy with it now that it's?
I'm happy with what I was going for, but I'd like to do more to improve. You know.
What weren't you satisfied with when you finished that story?
I guess just. About the Losers, and he'd seen Lenny Zero, a story that I did with Andy, and he kind of took a punt on us. So it was literally our first ever work. So we had no clue what we were doing. No, literally no clue. But we just knew that we wanted to have a clue. So we tried. You know, that thing about trying really hard. You know, it's like we're really hungry for it.
Right.
So we just put everything we had into it. You know, and you know, because if that hadn't worked, you know, I wouldn't be sat here today. I don't think. You know, that was, you know, they took a chance, and if it had gone south, then things wouldn't be the same as they are now. You know, but actually, again, The Losers in a similar way has been amazing. You know, they made a movie out of it. It's kind of people always still bring books up and, you know, say they love it. So you know.
If I recall correctly, I don't know if this applied to you too, but so the movie came out and they had the premiere in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I think Andy couldn't come because...
Yeah, me too.
Because, so the volcano in Iceland was going off and it cut off all air traffic.
I was just chatting today about that, funny enough. Yeah, it was like 5 days out of all of history that the aviation goes down in the UK. And I'd already bought my nice suit that I was going to wear, and we couldn't go to Los Angeles.
How disappointing was that?
Yeah,
that
we ended up seeing it with Idris Elba because he was in the UK as well, so he couldn't go. We ended up seeing it with him in London, and which is still nice, but yeah. You know.
Not quite the same.
Not quite the same. Like I sort of break that suit out at any opportunity now, because it's just like I paid a lot of money for that suit and I didn't get the chance to wear it. So it's like any chance I get, I'm like, does it need a suit? You know, it's pretty sharp.
You don't have to dress up for work or anything. So.
Well, I should, right? I should walk down my garden, you know, like looking like $1 million, or at least, you know.
But
a few hundred quid.
You did you did an interview with us, a lengthy interview, and you talked about going out to Burbank and meeting with the marketing team.
Yep.
And they admitted to you that they stole one of your covers for an Ocean's 12 campaign.
It was just as if it was no big deal. And I was kind of flattered at the time, but of course, actually, it's kind of, am I flattered, or is that kind of, they said they took a Losers cover and did the Ocean's 12.
Walking on the number.
Walking across the... But to be fair, I mean, a lot of the Losers, we definitely had like Ocean's 11 in our minds when we were, you know, thinking about tone for that series. But so I guess it's all just cross-pollination. But yeah, I was literally sat in this guy's office. It was all loads of mahogany, you know, and kind of it was all very kind of corporate and proper. But he was taking the time out to show me all the stuff, which was really cool. But yeah, they just dropped like, we swiped your Losers cover for Ocean's 12 posters. Like, whoa, you know. So, but it happens, you know.
Have you found any other instances of people swiping your work?
No, I've had things where people thought it was by me and it's not. There's like a World War Z cover that poster that the people thought was mine. People thought I did the Wolverine, you know, that kind of Japanese drawing of the Wolverine, and that's not mine.
I know which one you're talking about. It's a white poster with black
like a
sketch.
Japanese style kind of.
Yeah.
I think he's like that kind of thing, you know. But I mean, it happens. Like a friend of ours, Ollie Moss, you know, his stuff is you know, it permeates other. Because it's funny, you sort of feel like, you know, I just work in a room by myself, you know, but of course this stuff does go out there and people do see it, and of course, you know. Designers and officers are going to be keeping an eye on stuff, and luckily with, you know, comics and, you know, people do see what we're up to, which is great, you know. Have
you watched the HBO series True Detective?
No, I've not seen it yet, but everyone I speak to is like, you've got to watch True Detective.
But are they also telling you that they think that you may have influenced some of the design of that show? Because I'm telling you, when you watch that show, especially when Matthew McConaughey kind of goes into his more drug trippy stuff, or if you get into the more crime scene stuff, it looks like a Jock influence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I've not heard that.
Now you got to watch it.
I've got to check it out.
And the writers of the show talk about being influenced by comic writers.
Right.
So there's a part of me that's thinking maybe a little Jock got into that show.
That sounds weird.
We're going to stop real quick. If anybody in the audience has any questions, we could take some right now. Go ahead.
On your Savage Wolverine story, I want to know how you came up with the idea of and the character of the kid.
Yeah.
And is that a character you guys want to return to?
Let me repeat the question.
Sure.
He's asking about the origins of your Savage Wolverine story and the characters that you created for it.
Yeah. So the story that I did, if anyone hasn't seen it, is I set it in the very far future, and the idea came from the fact that like Wolverine can regenerate his own cells, right? But he'd only ever be able to regenerate, you know, his existing cells. So what if, like, in 1 million years' time or 100,000 years' time, the world has changed, everyone else has evolved, but he's still this kind of like hairy little outcast, you know. Like it's almost like now he wants to be the outcast, but by this point he actually is because everyone else has changed. And that was kind of the root of the story of setting it in the far future. That isn't really what it ended up being about. But the kid, I mean, yeah, I mean, he's like a mini Wolverine, really. And I was really surprised Marvel let me do that. I wasn't expecting them to kind of to let me, because apparently it's kind of like canon that no one can have the adamantium and the claws, you know. But because this was kind of out of continuity, that like I sent them out, and Janine, my editor, would say, showed it to the higher ups, and they'd be like, well, where are his claws, you know? And they were like, really, you want me? You happy to let me do like this mini Wolverine guy? And so they totally let me run with it. And yeah, I would like to go back to him, because I feel like that story ended up being just Act A, really, of a, you know, I set it up so that they could then go off and do something together. So yeah, who knows? Yeah, maybe I will return to it. I don't know.
Any other questions? Okay. Go ahead.
Do you have like a favorite splash page that you've done?
Do you have a favorite splash page?
Another thing I was just talking about today, I quite like, there's a splash page of Batman in the Black Mirror where he's diving off a building, and that was like the basis for a black and white statue that they did. Quite like that.
Interesting. Let's move on to a book you're going to be doing with Scott Snyder here.
Yep.
A little book called Witches. And I want to read you a quote from our interview with Scott about the book. He said, "I want Witches to be the book I feel terrible about at my kid's soccer game. I want this book to be like, you read it and say, they let this guy write Superman?" I'm guessing you've seen some scripts by now.
No, not yet.
No, you haven't
not
seen it?
yet. No. This weekend we're finalising things. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm due to start working on it in about 3 weeks or a month. So.
Are you a little scared? Because that quote, that freaked me out a little bit.
No, I'm not scared. No. No. It's like, if you're going to go for it, go for it. You know, it's like don't you know, pull any punches. Yeah, I mean Scott's, you know, he's clearly got a big horror influence in his writing. Yeah, I mean the Batman story we did was a horror story. I was quite surprised they kind of let us do it quite so much, you know. But with this, yeah, he really wants to. And we were talking about how kind of, I remember being about 15 and reading Pet Sematary, and I was actually scared, you know, turning the pages of a book, and that's quite an amazing thing to
Yep.
do, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can pull that off with a comic, because I think there's more imagination with a novel, you know. But that's our goal, is to make people scared.
Is that influence? Like, a quote like that just makes me think, okay, he's going to the darkest places in his mind.
Well,
do you have to go to the darkest places in your mind to?
I'm already
work on a
there,
book?
Jonah. Yeah.
So you have to pull yourself into the light, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I need to sort of put on some kind of like mainstream television just to sort of, you know. It's true. Joking aside, sometimes I do it, like I walk into work at 9 a.m. and put on like Cannibal Holocaust and start drawing, and think, what am I? This is like Tuesday morning. What am I doing? But, yeah.
Do you have any limits in terms of what you will depict and how far you will go with your art?
Only moral ones, I guess, but I don't think so. Only if it was something, you know, like really not okay. But you know, I'm lucky I work with really good writers, so generally, you know, there's always a kind of, and anyone that's reasonably intelligent, you know, will have a line, and that.
Have you ever been? Have you ever approached that line and
No,
pull yourself back?
the only time is, again, I come back to the Black Mirror, the Batman story, where like the Joker kind of disfigures Commissioner Gordon's wife, and there's this shot of her in the bath, and she's like naked, and her face is all messed up, and there's blood dripping down, and I forgot, I gave that to a friend, and it's like a Batman book, and his sort of 7-year-old boy apparently said, you know, "Dad, what's happening? You know, what's happening here?" And I was like, "Oh my God!" You know, when you're young and that stuff's really potent, and you think, you know, it seems like a real sort of thing. So
Sure.
I kind of worried about that a little bit. But that's only because it was in a Batman book. Like with Witches, it's a horror book, and this is what you're going to get. You know, so
Talk a little bit about what you get creatively out of your work outside of comics, because you've become quite the designer, and you know, you did the stuff with Mondo. You've worked on a number of movies now.
Yeah.
Talk about what that gives you creatively compared to your comics work.
It's just sort of flexing different muscles, I suppose. You know, comics are really, really hard work. You know, drawing interior pages is like really, you know, it can be a grind. You know, it's a real commitment, and you know, I just get to do different. I just have a different kind of speed, I suppose, on the other stuff. Doing the film concept work, you get paid a weekly rate, so you're not getting paid per page. So you can just, and I'm sort of quick enough that you know, I sort of get enough in, so I can get a kind of a good weekly rate and just take it steady and, you know, really get into what you're doing. The same with the poster stuff. You know, you get a generally pretty generous deadlines, and you can, you know, take your time and do something, put it away, work on something else, come back to it. So it's just a different kind of speed. But comics are a different thing. I mean, that's what makes comics so good. Is there like a rhythm? You know, that good storytelling should have a pace and a kind of, you know, a kind of overall tone to it. It's not just about the one image or the specific page. It's about the whole thing. So that just requires a different kind of mindset, I suppose. I find, you know. So it's just a different, you know, and it's nice to balance all those things.
Talk a little bit about your time on Dredd. You did so in an interview, and it sounded like, because I know you are a big lover of Dredd,
True story.
And the journey you took with that movie had to be up and down because there was Comic-Con, and the reaction there was so effusive.
Yeah.
And then the movie didn't really connect
in America. It didn't take in America at all, though. No, but
the character just has a hard time penetrating in this country, it seems.
You know, it's disappointing that it didn't do better because, you know, because it would have helped the chance of a sequel. But people still, like, I mean, this weekend, you know, they're showing it again tomorrow night, and we're doing a Q&A with Carl Urban, and you know, people coming up to the 2000 AD panel today, and they're clearly, half of them were there because they'd seen the movie and loved it, and then came along to the panel. So, you know, I feel like that movie is one that people that will hang around for a long time, and it will have a special place for people because that's, you know, people seem to love it. So, you know, the fact that it didn't do the money that you might hope it might do, I mean, that's a shame, you know, but it's not, you know.
Still a good movie.
It's still a good movie, hopefully, you know. So that's what I try and think about, you know.
All right, I've tried to get into Judge Dredd myself.
Right.
I never could. I never understood the comics. Educate us Americans on who this character is and why he's so special.
Who is Judge Dredd? Does everyone know who Judge Dredd is? Has everyone read? How many people have read Judge Dredd? There's a few. You know.
A couple hands, yeah.
Well, we were talking about it in the panel today. I think maybe 2000 AD in general, and Dredd particularly, was perhaps kind of not critical, but it was a satire on America by British people for British people. So we were wondering, there was Douglas Woke, is it, the guy that's writing for the IDW Dredd at the moment, was on the panel, and he's an American that loves Dredd, and I know Americans that love Dredd, you know. But he wondered whether it's just that's too much for people to get past, you know. I mean, I mean, they're enjoyable stories. I don't know. I mean, why did you just not?
I just could never connect to it.
Yeah,
it seemed very bleak.
Yeah.
In a way that American comics that are dark too aren't quite that same bleak.
But then you get stories like, you know, The Stupid Gun or Fatties, you know, or like, you know, or kind of all these extreme versions of like the way society is now, and then in Mega City 1, 122 years later, it's kind of extreme, and you know, there's a lot of comedy in it as well.
There
you
is.
know? It's like it's black comedy than normally. And
that's the thing. I think that's it.
And I love black comedy. Like that might not be some people's bag, but I love black comedy.
I don't know that that's really a typically American thing. There certainly have been black comedic films that have done incredibly well. I think a Jim Carrey movie, The Cable Guy.
Yeah.
It was definitely a black comedy, but it didn't really connect. And I think maybe that's the difference.
Yeah,
is
maybe
that
so.
There's a dryness and a sarcasm in England that's not necessarily here as much.
Right.
And I think you actually just hit upon it. That's definitely evident in Dredd comics.
Yeah, and then the other thing with the movie, of course, is I think mainstream America would imagine that the new Dredd film was a reboot of the Sylvester Stallone original, you know.
Do you guys all hate us for making that movie? Does everybody in the United Kingdom hate us?
But it was a British guy that was the director. Danny Cannon grew up a Dredd fan. You know?
But it was very typical paint by numbers American blockbuster in that regard. Do you ever get sick of talking about Andy Diggle? And I mean that with all love, because but you guys work together all the time, and I'm sure you get that question a lot. I
never get sick about talking about Andy Diggle.
How
could I?
Because you guys have worked on so many projects together.
Yeah.
Is he really your go-to guy creatively? Is he your?
We just. I mean, we've talked about it before. I know, but we've just. You know, there's something definitely there. There's something that where we click, you know.
And you guys didn't find each other. You guys were set up. Not to sound
well, no, actually, and Andy was the editor of 2000 AD when I was trying to get work at 2000 AD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he actually gave me my first job, and he was like the assistant editor, and the main editor didn't like my stuff at all. But Andy gave me my first work, so I actually met him in that capacity, and then when he was saving money to do the 10th anniversary of the Judge Dredd magazine, which is like a monthly thing that they publish. They wanted to get Frank Miller to do a cover, but Frank was going to be quite expensive, so Andy saved some editorial budget by writing this little story, Lenny Zero, which he didn't pay himself for. And then Frank Miller did this cover. I don't know whether anyone's seen this Frank Miller Dredd cover, but and the main editor, David Bishop, it's kind of like quite to the point, and a lot of people have said the Frank Miller cover isn't so good. I actually quite like it. I mean, Frank's stuff is kind of crazy. You know, he has kind of like syringes and hammers and stuff all sticking out of him, but the anatomy on the legs was a little odd, but you know, whatever. But apparently, David Bishop sort of phoned him up and said, "Oh, we got the cover. You know, just wondering if you could maybe rework it." And apparently, Frank replied like, "You know, you can't use the cover. Don't ever call me again." And that was that. So
wow.
So. But that was my first work with him.
That was an opportunity for you.
With Andy, yeah. And then Will saw Lenny Zero and
the rest is history.
It all kind of went from there. Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions from out here? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've just been impressed. The first time I saw your work was in The Losers, and I was just immediately struck by your design sensibilities. I have no idea of your biography or what you've done before or since. I wonder if you could talk just about broadly how you, over time, developed that sensibility in your comic work as it's taken you other places. What were your influences in comics and otherwise, and what gets you going now? There's only a handful of people, I think, in the comics field who are bringing what you bring in terms of graphic design and more than just your strengths in visual storytelling, but there are other layers on top of this is beautiful execution.
Wow.
The question really is about your influences, but clearly he's a big fan of your work too.
Design-wise, well, I mean, I've always liked things outside of comics, basically, as well as comics. You know, I think comics can be guilty a little bit, and certainly if you like guys trying to get into drawing comics, sometimes you can just tell they're only influenced by other comics. You know, and I've always liked other stuff. So like early on when we were doing The Losers. I mean, actually, like, it's really kind what you said, but actually, you're right. There isn't a lot of great design sense often in comics. So actually, if you've even got a little bit of it, then maybe you stand out. You know, I've had no training. I just do what, you know. I try and do something that I think looks good. You know, I'm totally aware of design, and I'm totally aware of how that's a strength. You know, it's only something I've taught myself, really. But yeah, I mean, when I was younger, sort of skate magazines, you know, there's kind of covers where you have a tiny little figure it's sort of hanging in the air, and then there'll be like the sky, and then the texture of the concrete where it's all fisheye lensed. You know that, you know, if you bring that to, if you look at any of my covers now, I've told you that, you'll see sort of, you know, that's an influence on some covers, and you know, just well, you know, old movie posters, you know. Just anything and everything that I think looks cool and is a good looking piece of work. You know, that's I sort of want to bring that to comic. Like, for me, I want to make a comic that I can give to anyone that's not necessarily a comic fan, and they can go, oh, this is cool, you know. And having, you know, instead of having kind of like muscle bound, skimpily clad people beating the, you know, 10 bells of hell out of each other on the cover, if you give them something else, you know, maybe they can relate to that. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
You have such a strong approach to design. Would you ever want to direct a movie?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah?
Yeah, I totally would. Yeah, I've thought about that quite a lot, actually, because Dredd 2, Electric Boogaloo. Yeah, because it was a fact when I started working on films, I realised what an asset drawing comics has been and learning storytelling through comics. You know, you just take it for granted because it's your job. You know, if you've got to draw a comic, you've got to do establishing shots and drama and, you know, direct the camera and lighting and acting and then you're like, hang on, I'm directing and acting and you know, lighting and everything. So and you know, and editing as well. You know, getting the beats of a scene or whatever. So and then it was it was on Dredd as well, because I was in the editing suite quite a lot and when Alex was putting it together, I kept thinking I could do this, you know. And then, not, and then I just thought, you know, these are all the things that I know how, you know, I know how to do this. So I'd definitely be interested in doing that. Yeah.
Have you pursued it at all? Or
not really.
yet?
Not really. No,
Okay.
not really.
I wouldn't mind seeing a Jock directed film. And you've got the perfect name.
I was just going to say, do you think I'd have to lose the name for the film?
Why?
Make it a bit more respectable.
No, there's plenty of one-named people in Hollywood, man.
McG, come on.
What do you hate drawing?
Oh, comics. No.
I'll tell you a little story.
Yeah, go on.
Real quick. The first time I ever asked an artist this was Keith Giffen.
Right.
And if you've ever interviewed or talked to Keith Giffen, you know he just says whatever's on his mind.
Yeah.
And I did not expect this response. He got angry. He's like, I hate drawing horses. And as he talked about it, he got angrier and angrier. He's like, their musculature is impossible to do. And he got so animated about it.
Yeah, animals are really hard. Like, I can't draw animals without reference. You know, that's maybe tells you something. Like buildings, you know, you can, you know, humans, I can, but if it's animals are really, really hard.
Yeah.
But speaking about drawing horses, I was at a con in France a couple of months ago with Guerra that draws scalped.
Mm-hmm.
And Guerra's really passionate and he's amazing to talk to if you ever get the chance to speak to him. But he said to me, like on the Friday, this week he's from Croatia, I think it was Croatia? Serbia? So he's Serbian. So he goes, this weekend I will teach you how to draw horses. And I'm like, oh, okay. But then he didn't proceed, then he went. I was like, oh, okay, all right. And then Saturday he goes, we must set some time aside. And he was like, I was like, right, what's he going to say? And then literally on the Sunday night, he took me out, we were all in the bar, and he just took me outside and schooled me for like 20 minutes on how to draw horses. Yeah, and now I know how to draw horses. and it was all kind of conceptual as well. It wasn't like this muscle is here. It was that it all comes from the back legs. That was his concept.
Right.
And the minute you think of it as the two back legs pushing something forward, then you'll be able to draw them. And it was amazing. He's so good. You should speak to him sometime. He's brilliant.
20 minutes and you learned how to draw horses. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
There's another project that's been long coming for you, Nelson. I can't say Peter's last name. Could you?
Serafinowicz.
Yeah, most people know him as Pete from Shaun of the Dead.
Yep.
You know that. What is Nelson, and where's that at now?
So I met him on doing a radio thing about the losers. Funnily enough, one of those things that keeps cropping up. And he just said he had this script that he'd love to do as a comic, and he sent me it, and I really liked it. And then it was the following week. It was like Kapow, the UK comic show that Mark Miller and his wife was putting on. So I said to Pete, "Oh, you know, I'm in London. You know, come along to the show if you want to sort of talk about it." Then Mark Miller heard and said, "Oh, let's announce it at the show." You know, you know. So we had this sort of big announcement. But in reality, we'd only kind of talked about doing it. And to cut a long story short, we're still doing it, but the schedules have just completely. In fact, I spoke to him about a month ago, and he's like, "Is this going to be our year?" You know. So it's like a. It's not really he's not really a superhero. He's a kind of slightly genetically altered guy, so he's bigger and stronger, and he's got a really bad like Iron Man suit that he has to plug into the wall to kind of like charge himself up. But
pretty low rent superhero.
Yeah. But he's kind of given the green light to kind of to you know, take care of like paedophiles and, you know, really awkward elements, which are really, he just goes and beats the shit out of them, sort of thing. You know. So that's his base. I mean, Pete's known for comedy, and this isn't really a comedy, as I've just, you know, maybe said one element to the story, but yeah. I mean, we're just trying to make it work, you know. I mean, he's just done Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's busy with a ton of stuff, so he's not. You know, we've got like the first script, and I've sort of laid out about half of it, and that's as far as we got. So it was one of those things where it, you know, it got announced slightly prematurely, I guess. You know, we didn't necessarily have a solid schedule in mind. So,
one day.
Yeah, one day, exactly.
Any other questions from out here? Go ahead.
Forgive me if this is boring, because I know that some people don't like process questions.
No, that's fine.
But one of the things that's always stood out to me about your work is how it looks like you have these digital elements that that almost don't fit with the drawing. Like they seem a little bit askew as if like to draw attention to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's something that has always really grabbed me visually in your work, has really fascinated me. And I'm just wondering, like, if you could talk a little bit about, you know, how you start and when you start thinking about how you're going to sort of augment your work with those digital elements.
Wants to hear more about your process.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess sort of, see, I used to paint. That's how I started. I painted Magic the Gathering cards. Was my first work. You know, and they were physical paintings, and that's what I used to do all the time. Was just paint. And then it was Andy Diggle when he phoned me up and said, "Can you do 12 black and white Dredd pages in a month?" And I was like, "Yeah." You know, so then I did black and white stuff. But so yeah, so there was that, and then. So when I got a Mac, I didn't see it as now I have to do a digital, you know, shiny superhero sort of thing. It's like this is just now another thing that I can use to try and get what I was trying to do. Like when I used to paint, I used to spend like literally hours thinking about and trying out like what the base coat would look like, and then if you put opaque paint on top, what that would do to the paint underneath, and all these incredibly boring things when I'm saying them to an audience of people, but. It's really important stuff when you're trying to, you know, create an image. And so when I got a Mac, suddenly I had all those layers and all those sort of tones and effects that I was looking for when I used to paint were really much easier and much more available. So I kind of tried to think of it more as kind of a collage. You know, I was able to use different things to get what I wanted. So, but in relation to like digital elements, I mean, sometimes if I put like a sky or something, then I will start with a photo. But I'll always paint over it, you know. So yeah, I mean, I remember that I went to art college just for 1 year. I didn't go on and do any sort of degree course or anything. But the one thing I took away is one of my tutors said it doesn't matter how it doesn't matter how you arrive at an image. It's the image, it's the final image that matters. And that's a really obvious thing to say, but it's actually sort of when you do this job, it's profound because it is at the end of the day, it's you know, if you've done your job, like if someone uses a digital element badly and it jars, then you haven't done your job properly. You know that end of the day thing that my tutor was trying to tell me, you've not done it properly because it's jarring. But if you use any element you want or it doesn't matter, so long as it works for the image that you're trying to, or the cover that you're trying to kind of sell, that you're trying to, you know, make people see something and go, oh, that's cool, that works, you know. So I've just tried not to limit myself, I suppose, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah.
Interesting. Anything else out here? Anybody else? Go ahead.
I know your reputation with being quick about covers or interior pages or whatever, but what's the quickest cover you've ever done before?
Yeah.
You have a reputation for being quick.
What's the amount of time that took?
Or what's the fastest you've ever...
This is actually Justin from Mondo, and I take months for his stuff. So this is amazing.
Yeah, how long did that Dark Knight Rises poster take you?
Long
Yeah,
time. Yeah. Okay. I sort of thought I shouldn't tell people this, but it is actually true. I've done 3 covers in 45 minutes. No, not all 3, but I've done 3 separate covers, and they took 45 minutes each time. One of them was the last issue of Batman: The Black Mirror, which is a cover that I still really like. And it like double shipped because of the New 52 or whatever it was, the renumbering, and we had to finish the thing. And Mike was like, I need a cover like now, you know. And I did a sketch that I knew. I did it in 5 minutes, and then I penciled and inked it in 40 minutes. And then coloured it in about another 45 minutes. So overall, but I drew it in 45 minutes. And there's a couple of Wolverine covers that were 45 minutes as well.
Wow. Your work is kind of dark, I think you'd say. Are there certain characters that you just wouldn't approach? Like, do you think your style would work for Superman?
Well, I've just drawn Superman, funnily enough.
That's true, yeah.
And I found him really hard, I've got to say. Yeah, no, I don't think I am the right guy for Superman. It was a Superman Joker story that I did with Max Landis, the writer of the movie Chronicle.
Oh, right, right.
It was like a digital first thing, and I think it comes out in print in a month or 2. I found Superman really hard. When I was a boy, I really liked Superman, so I was kind of excited about the prospect of doing it, but I think there was like 3 or 4 panels where I felt like I kind of got something, but I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Jim Lee or whoever, you know, they're amazing at that, and Jim can draw, you know, as well as anyone, and his style is just so suited to that. But I'm just not that, you know, that because the reason I say that is often superhero guys can't draw very well, and Jim can draw, you know, really well.
Right.
So I'm not, you know, I have great respect for people that can do that, but I'm just clearly not that guy, and it's not deliberate. It's just, you know, doesn't suit. You know, give me Batman with a lot of black and and shadows and rain and stuff, and I'm there. You know? But yeah, you know, because Superman has to be handsome, like, and you know, you can draw handsome people, but he's a certain like he has to be not so much handsome, he has to be perfect, you know. And I like, you know, when Wolverine's all messed up with kind of cuts and bruises, and that's, you know, that's.
I'm guessing you've kind of done your dream project. You've done stuff with Dredd. You've worked on Batman.
Yeah.
Are there other characters that you are really desperate to get your hands on?
Not really.
Really?
I don't mean to be blasé, but only because I have, like, you know, maybe the Punisher, but you know, yeah, but only because I think I could probably, you know.
What about a character like the Hulk?
Yeah, I've drawn him a couple of times as well, actually.
Right.
I did a couple of covers, and I thought it was going to be a lot more fun than it actually was, you know, so again, it just didn't quite gel, you know, maybe.
Why wasn't it fun? Was he just a struggle because his design, or was it just
yeah, I just didn't find it as I thought it would just be like a no-brainer. It would be, you know, drawing massive, dynamic, bold cover with massive.
There's a lot of talk about creator-owned, and a lot of artists and writers moving in that direction almost full-time. Is that something you'd want to do? Is that something you're moving towards?
I've always liked the mentality of a lot of directors speak about like doing one for them and one for me sort of thing, and because you know it's a great honor to work on something like Batman and the company characters. You know that's an amazing thing to do, in Wolverine, and you know. But it's also, there is something special about doing your own stuff. Like it is far more rewarding. Like I feel like it's more rewarding in the way that really matters. You know, like it's really cool to work on some things and you get a buzz off of it and it's exciting. But the things that really matter, you know, across the board are the things that are the kind of rewards you get when it's your own stuff. You know, that's a different kind of thing. But it's not, you know, I'd definitely like to do more of it. But I'd love to, you know, talk about doing another Batman story, funnily enough. And you know, that's, you know, I'd happily do that as well. It's just a balance, like anything. You know, like we were talking about earlier. I feel like, you know, if you've just got all those elements, so long as they're balanced and you're not too far one way or the other, then you'll always hopefully, you know, be plain sailing. You know.
And my last question for you, would you ever write for another artist?
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, sure, why not? I'd like, yeah, I mean, I'd have to be further down, you know, I'd have to be much more confident in my writing and much more kind of together with my writing, I think, before I even thought about it.
Do you think you could actually step away from it and just hand it over to the artist and let the artist do it their way?
I'd love that. I'd love that. I've done a little short story for Vertigo for the CMYK anthology, and I wrote that with a good friend of mine, Lee Garbett, who draws Loki at the moment. He lives locally. We used to share a studio, and he said actually, like, we've kind of written it together, but I'm drawing it, and he said, getting my pages, like, he's heard writers say that it's always nice when you get the pages in and they kind of surprise you, or it's not, you know, it's a kind of gives you something that you maybe didn't foresee yourself, and he said that it was really nice getting my pages for that reason. So yeah, it'd be great to see what someone else would do with it. It'd be really interesting. Yeah. Very cool.
Jock, it's always a pleasure talking to you, and it's good seeing you.
Thanks, Jonah.
He's
Thanks,
Jock.
Man.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you, mate. You've been doing these like all day.
Yeah, I have 8 tomorrow. Wow.
The research as well. You've been all right.
It's been okay. Yeah. I haven't had a bad one yet.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see how tomorrow goes.
Cool. Thanks,
Good seeing
Jonah.
you. Thank you, sir.
Hey.
It was
How's it going?
great. Really
Thank
impressed
you.
with your work, man.
Thanks for the question.
I've never had the pleasure before of seeing you at a con, so.
Right, right.
Fun,
Oh,
yeah.
thanks.
If you would please.
Sure. What's your name?
I'm Jack. And I'm actually writing this one up for CBR tonight. So.
Oh, this.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
yeah, so I get to go.
I tried not to worry about what I was saying, but I actually know what I said.
You were great. It was I think it was one of the most fun one of these that I've ever.
Oh, wow, thanks, Jeff. Sure, that's very kind of you. I really very nearly didn't
Really?
But if you see there's like there's a snapshot cover.
Yeah.
I think you might have lost something, but there was something.
No, this everything.
Oh, really?
I see that.
Really?
Yeah, just watch the opening credits. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But beautiful work, man.
Thanks.
Really good panel.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Thanks
you
for coming
too.
along.
I also work for
Oh, sweet. Nice to meet you, Casey. Whoa!
If I ever had to do a commission for me, and you should draw me prints.
Really clever, like fun stuff.
I know.
Cheers for coming, guys.
There's like 7 floors in this building.
I know, it's ridiculous. I know.
We asked the guy, we're like, how do you get there?
And they're just
604. And he's like,
No.
No, there is some secret elevators.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Perk of being an artist, I guess.
the bathrooms back there are really. So if you need to like run into
In the club.
So how next? Right and then right, and there's like a little leather like waiting couch. They're like really upscale.
So we're going to hang out.
Yeah.
Back to the hotel. Chain.
Yeah? What are you guys doing?
Day to night.
I like it. Yes.
Isn't that nice?
Do you want a beer? Do you want to go for a beer? Do you want to go back to the hotel or something? Just sit in that bar or somewhere else?
I think so.
Yeah, 'cause
It's
it's
easy way for most companies.
Yeah, that's fine.
Easiest thing to do, right?
I mean, what the show floor probably closes pretty soon too, yeah?
Might be closed now.
Ours gonna be at 8.
Well, I will see you guys at 11.
Tomorrow, 9:45.
Long day, yeah.
See you, Jock.
Thank you. No, this is one of the last, but there's 1 or 2 things that'll be going on, but.
Score! Got another book!
Well, we're just doing a real quick run through the room. Millions do all the work that we know
There's
this.
an art gallery thing that Kelly's. Pete has.
Oh, yeah, no, the art gallery show we missed is here.
Oh yeah, I know, but there's another one that's a comic one that they're doing.
So what were you saying about Pete?
special this week. But yeah, I forgot that's, I meant to go find that. I couldn't find the artist.
The TARDIS is on the 2nd or 3rd floor of Hall.
I mean, I have 4 days.
Yeah, you have to. It's
Yeah.
near where, it's where the original computer stuff was.
I'm gonna go tell the city in Springfield, make sure you
Near
grab,
where did
will
you
you
get
grab charger and stuff?
I feel like that stuff's all good. I don't know if they need us to turn off the monitors or whatnot, but, you know, we can run to the war room and ask them to
What
do
they
it.
said, just look on the screen and people were changing and all kinds of chaos.
I really want one of those chairs.
I know,
IKEA.
okay, I hate the chairs for the purpose of why they're there, but they're super, they look sweet. I just wish they didn't swivel and they didn't roll.
Yeah.
Are they comfortable? Have you sat in it?
Briefly, I don't remember how.
Maybe not so comfortable, that's why you see them like bobbing around.
I think people are nervous.
I didn't know if it was that or it's just, wheels.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sitting on something with wheels.
yeah, no, the problem really is people spinning back and forth or rolling
If
their
you're
chairs.
watching on a camera, they think Jock was about to fall on the side.
Yeah, and it was so hard to keep them in frame.
And when they're done spinning, they don't necessarily go back to where they just were.
Exactly.
That was almost a gangster league going for a while.
guy reminds me of Ricky. Never say his last name. Gervaisi.
Gervais?
Yeah, the comedian guy.
Yeah. It was pretty cool getting to see Stan Sakai.
Who's that?
The guy did the Son of Jimbo.
Oh yeah. And I'm not really a great fan of that.
I'm not
I mean,
a super
I like
big
it.
fan,
It's nice.
but
It's
I
nice.
appreciate the fact that he's like a like he's a legend, you know? It's like,
Yeah, supposedly. I don't know.
It's like the movie The Seven Samurai. I haven't actually watched it, but I know
Yeah.
it's got all kinds of controversies. All those are good.
To be fair, there's lots of things like the Harry Potter books is always my example. I thought that looks so stupid, dumb. And I finally was like, hey, everybody around me keeps talking about it. Just so I know a little bit about it, I'll read the first book. And then like 2 weeks later, the second book. Okay, where's the third book? So the Savage Wolverine, like I want to read that now. I didn't realize that. That's one of those things I thought like just
I
looking at
totally
it.
did a typo. So normally I type ahead of time